Hello there, my name is Hydo and welcome to the Pantheon. And you know, one of the things I hate most is when you make friends with an enormous Sphinx-like creature and then they go and sell your secrets. I hate it. And you know one guy like that is Tivit, the seller of secrets. Look at him with his big, massive head. But it's a really cool commander, despite my misgivings about his, he's going to sell you down the river. But it's a 6-mana 6/6 with flying and ward 3. Ooh. And it's a Sphinx rogue. Council's Dilemma. I love this mechanic. It was fantastic in all the conspiracy sets. Whenever Tivit enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, starting with you, each player votes for evidence or bribery. For each evidence vote, investigate, which means you get a clue token. For each bribery vote, create a treasure token. And while voting, you may vote an additional time. So we always get 2 votes. We're able to skew the political landscape in our favour. And this card, fantastic. I think this card just goes into so many different directions. Can be very broken, can get some nice combo sort of builds going. But I think there's some nice casual applications. So really good design there. And you know what else is really well designed? My YouTube channel. Please tell me that in the comments. But come and join me and subscribe because I'm going to be making videos like this for every single legendary creature. So come along on the journey. Without further ado, let's have a look at my top 5 for Tivit. And in at number 5, we've got the illusion of choice, which is what every voter feels really, isn't it? It's a 1 blue instant. You choose how each player votes this turn. Draw a card. So we're not only just going to be using Council's Dilemma for our commander's ability, we're going to be using it across a swath of different cards with this sort of voting mechanic. And being able to define exactly how things go on a cantrip for 1 blue, instant speed, draw a card, automatic include, and fantastic in the deck. Very similarly, we've got Brago's Representative, a 3-mana 1/4 human advisor. While voting, you get an additional vote, so we can stack up those votes. So with this and our commander, we can have 3 votes, so we can always overpower anyone's decision. Then we've also got Ballot Broker, 3-mana 2/3. When we vote, we get an additional vote, so that's 4 votes potentially, and then we just win every single vote that we want. We get exactly what we want. But what are we going to be voting on? Well, the Council's Dilemma really is, how many extra turns are we going to get? So Expropriate is a 9-mana sorcery with Council's Dilemma, starting with me. That's me. Each player votes for time or money. For each time vote, take an extra turn after this one. Ooh. For each money vote, choose a permanent owned by that voter and gain control of it. Exile Expropriate. Now, when I'm playing a game, I don't generally want to gain control of my own permanents, so I'm always going to be giving myself extra turns. It might be surprising to you, but the amount of extra turns is just astronomical with this commander. And the great thing about this commander is when it comes in for 6 mana, quite weighty, we're going to get at least 2 treasure tokens because both of my votes are going to be for treasure. So that means next turn, potentially, we could cast this 9-mana spell. So not only is this commander really, really cool, can draw tons of cards, get loads of artifacts, do loads of different things, but it's a ramp commander as well. It's just insane how many different things you can do. An Expropriate, phenomenal card. Then we've got a Split Decision, which won't happen too often with the amount of votes I've got. 2 mana for an instant. Will of the Council. Choose target instant or sorcery spell. Starting with you, each player votes for denial or duplication. If denial gets more votes, counter that spell. If duplication gets more votes, or the vote is tied, copy the spell. You choose new targets for the copy. Really, really fun and interesting counter spell that works wonderfully with our commander. And because of the extra votes, we're going to be able to decide, do we want to copy this or do we want to counter it? It's a really, really nice bit of play, and we can steal some magnificent cards. We could even use this on our own spells if we're really confident that we're going to be able to copy it. If we're casting Expropriate, well, let's copy it. Unless your opponents then outweigh your votes, and oh dear, it's gone wrong, hasn't it? But Plea for Power is another wonderful voting card. 4 mana for a sorcery. starting with you, each player votes for time or knowledge. If time gets more votes, take an extra turn after this one. Hooray! If knowledge gets more votes, or the vote is tied, draw 3 cards. So more than likely, this is just a 4-mana draw 3, not the end of the world. But if you stacked up enough votes and you can control the voting, we could get an extra turn out of it. And it goes to the graveyard, so maybe you can buy it back with something. Really, really awesome card. One of my favorites. And if you note the artwork, it's like in a time sort of, what the hell do you call them? Hourglass. Hourglass. I was thinking of my own figure in the mirror. This is a wonderful piece of art and just a perfectly made card. I love it. Then there's Magister of Worth. 6 mana for a 4/4 flying. When it enters the battlefield, starting with me, each player votes for Grace or Condemnation. If Grace gets more votes, each player returns each creature card from their graveyard to the battlefield. If Condemnation gets more votes or the vote is tied, destroy all creatures other than Magister of Worth. Really, really cool sort of voting mechanic. And these sort of cards aren't that powerful, apart from Expropriate, which is just insane. But they're fun. And that's the cool thing about the voting mechanic. It really makes a game go one of two ways, and I love that. It's a great decision point that can really change a game. So all of these cards, wonderful, work fantastically with our commander, which takes me to number 4. And at number 4, we've got Summer of Discord and other ways of sort of getting people on side with you or manipulating people, which is always fun and very political. So 6 mana for a 6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Could be me, could be you, could be John, could be Peter, could be anyone. Don't pick me. Whenever damage is dealt to one of the chosen players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. So you can really pit 2 people against each other, or if you want to protect yourself from a certain player who's like the biggest threat, you choose yourself and him. Then, or her, or they will not want to attack you because they'll take a ton of damage back in response. So really, really cool card and a great political tool. And as you'll see coming up, there's a bit of a flying theme. So having a big demon fits well. Then there's the assist mechanic, another battle bond mechanic here. 4 mana for an instant. Assist. Another player may pay up to 3 generic for the spell's cost. Counter target spell. So potentially, for us, this is 1 single blue to counter a spell. Ooh, really, really cool. And it's a political tool. You could sort of make friends with someone. Say, look at this card I've got on you. Look at this. It's a topiary stomp. But you can say to them, look, I've got a counter spell. Hold up some mana and we'll deal with him over there. And, people tend to like that sort of thing because, they're friends. But then what happens is they don't cast anything. Then the guy that you made a deal with plays a game when you're playing, oh Christ, sorry, and you counter it. But great card. Then there's the play of the game. 8 mana for a sorcery. Assist. Another player may pay up to 6 of the spell's cost. Exile all non-permanents. Really, really good. Someone might have got massively ahead and you and a friend can help negate that. You can negotiate, say, oh, I'll pay 4, you pay 4. They go, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Or they say, I'll pay 1. And you're like, Christ, do I have to pay 7? But this is a great card, a wonderful board wipe that'll just control the board. Then there's a game plan, which I go through life not having one. 6 mana for an assist. And each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. Exile game plan. Can really, really end up rocketing you ahead or potentially one of your friends. If you're making sort of a bond with someone. Battle bond. Really, really good card and very cool and very nice sort of fitting way of manipulating people. I like all these cards. I just think they're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful playing Magic the Gathering cards. Which brings me on to number 3. And at number 3, we've got Sphinx Tribal, because our commander is a Sphinx. And I think this commander is one of the best Sphinx Tribal commanders. I think there was a Unette, I think it was, the 5 mana 3/5 or whatever it was that cares about odd and even cost sort of stuff. Rubbish compared with Tivit. And Unesh Cryo Sphinx Sovereign is one of the best Sphinxes around. 6 mana for a flying Sphinx, 4/4. Sphinx spells you cost 2 less to cast. That's a great reduction. Whenever it or another Sphinx enters the battlefield under your control, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles, put 1 pile into your hand, the other into your graveyard. So much value, and there is a flicker theme in this deck, or there could be. So having that reduction in our commander, make our commander cost 4 mana is amazing, and we're getting wonderful enter the battlefield effects. Great stuff. Really, really good stuff. Then there's the Aetherspawn Sphinx. 9 mana for a 4/4, but with affinity for artifacts. And what does our commander create? It creates at least 5 artifacts when it enters the battlefield. Because we're going to have 5 votes, that's 5 different artifacts. So this is automatically reduced by 5. That's amazing. Then it's got flying and cascade. So we can cascade into potentially something massive, or more than likely a mana rock or something like that. But it's good value. And if we bounce it back to our hand, recast it, we get it all over again. Then there's Sphinx Ambassador, one of my favourite cards. I love this effect. 7 mana for a 5/5 flying. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for a card, and that player names a card. If you search for a creature card that isn't the named card, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Wonderfully fun card. It really makes your opponents sort of have to think, go through in their head, like what is in my deck? What's he going to pick? And then you probably end up with it, because to be honest, it's not likely that your opponents will get it. But then sometimes they do, and it just creates a phenomenal moment. I love this card. So good. Then there's Master of Predicaments. 5 mana 4/4 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose a card in your hand. That player guesses whether that card's converted mana cost is greater than 4. If that player guesses wrong, you may cast the card without paying its mana cost. Another little sub-game that you can play. I love these little things. And it's not that important, really, whether you get it right or not. Because, well, if they guess wrong, you get a free card. If not, you just cast it. Anyway, wonderful card. I love it. Then there's the Zor, the Lawbringer, another massive Sphinx. 6 mana, 6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during that player's next turn. Can really lock them off from playing board wipes and things like that. Whenever it attacks, you may pay an X, a white, a blue, and a blue. If you do, gain X life and draw X cards. Now, that's the card Sphinx's Revelation, isn't it? Oh, my God. So a Sphinx can make you cast Sphinx's Revelation. Great card advantage, and also a good way of controlling the board. Because if you flicker this guy, well, they keep having to not be able to cast instant and sorcery. Then Medamai the Aegis, really cool Sphinx. This artwork's lovely. 6 mana 4/4 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, take an extra turn after this one. Ooh, that's pretty good. And it can't attack during extra turn. So any extra turn is wonderful. Maybe we get another trigger on our commander when it attacks and deals combat damage to something. Get tons more artifacts. So much value to be had. And that brings me on finally to Scholar of the Lost Trove. 7 mana for a Sphinx. With flying and enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant, sorcery, or artifact card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If an instant or sorcery card we cast this way, put it into its graveyard, exile it instead. So this can rebuy one of our, choose one options, or no, not choose one. Christ, voting ones. I guess you're choosing one when you vote. We're not, so we've got 2 votes. Ooh. But really, really cool card, and a great way of rebuying something. So a nice selection of Sphinxes that I think fit really well into the deck. And that takes me to number 2. And at number 2, well, we're making a lot of artifacts, and at least 5 artifacts every time our commander either enters the battlefield or attacks and deals damage to our opponent. So let's play Time Sieve. 2 mana for an artifact. Tap, sacrifice 5 artifacts. Take an extra turn after this one. Ooh, now that's pretty goddamn good, isn't it? So this can end up, well, we can end up with infinite turns if we so desire. And we can just, if we can either keep flickering or keep attacking in. So absolutely insane. And then another use of all the artifacts is Kuldotha Forgemaster. 5 mana for a 3/5, tap, sacrifice 3 artifacts. Search your library for an artifact card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So this could get us Time Sieve, or potentially can get us a Thought Monitor. which works well with all the artifacts we're going to be making. 7 mana, 2/2 with affinity for artifacts. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. Nice and simple, works great after we've cast our commander. And if we're building our commander deck to sort of take advantage of artifacts, all our ramp will be artifacts, things like that. And then Academy Manufacturer, a phenomenal artifact with this commander. 3 mana, if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create one of each. So if we're voting, you know, we've got our 2 votes, we make 2 treasures. Well, suddenly we've also got 2 clues and 2, oh God, it's even worse. So if we're always going to get 5 tokens, which means we'll end up with 15 artifact tokens with this on the field. That's much better than I thought it was. My God, ridiculous value there. Which takes me to Cyberdrive Awakener, and a great use of all these artifacts coming in. 6 mana for a 4/4 with flying. Other artifact creatures you control are flying. Okay. When it enters the battlefield, until the end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 4/4. So if we've got all these tokens just sitting around, well, suddenly when this enters, all of those 15 tokens are now 4/4s with flying. Absolute game ender. And because we're playing sort of a flicker deck, we could potentially flicker this, do it the same thing next turn, just loads of attacking creatures. Then if we're searching of artifacts and things like that, Sharoom the Hegemon is a 6 mana Sphinx. It all comes together, doesn't it? Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a 5/5. So really good for rebuying any single one of these artifacts that we're going to be playing. And then finally, another Sphinx that we can search up. Magister Sphinx, 7 mana for a 5/5 with flying. Sphinx, when it enters the battlefield, target player's life total becomes 10. And that's pretty good because our commander's a 6/6. This is 5/5. We're just swinging. They're dead. And if we flicker this or something like that, we can set multiple players' life totals to 10. And everyone suffers. Everyone just burns alive, which is rather fun. And that takes me on to number 1. And at number 1, we've got Deadeye Navigator. Talked a bit about flickering, and Deadeye Navigator, a lot of people think this card should be banned. It's 6 mana. Kill it. Or, you know, just do something in response to the Soulbound trigger. There's plenty of ways to deal with this card, but the reason I've included it, because with our commander entering, even if we don't have any extra vote cards or anything like that, we can always choose to get 2 treasures. We can sacrifice them for 2 mana. If the Deadeye is paired with our commander, well, we can then exile it, it comes straight back. We choose 2 treasures again. Even if our opponents are all voting against us, we always get those treasures, which means we can get infinite clues. And then if we have one of the extra vote cards, we're going to get at least 3 treasures, and we've got infinite mana. Hooray, we've won the game. But this is just too good not to play. Then, if we're making infinite artifacts, Lumen Grid Sentinel is a wonderful card, and just I love this interaction. 3 mana human wizard flying. Whenever an artifact comes into play under your control, you may tap target permanent. So why would I use this? Well, with our flickering, I would do it in our opponent's upkeep. So flicker, they've just untapped everything. Then all of our artifacts enter, tap all of the lands down. They don't get to do anything. Then we just end up drawing until we win the game. Wonderful card and fits perfectly. Similarly, we've got the Contraband Kingpin. 2 mana, 1/4 with lifelink. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. So with the 5 artifacts coming in, we're going to scry 1 5 times. We can easily dig through our deck, and then if we've got some spare mana, use a clue to sacrifice and draw a card. Brilliant, and this can come out before our commander easily as it's 2 mana. Then another great flickery card is Miss Meadow Witch. 2 mana for a 1/1 exile target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it's not as instant as Deadeye Navigator, but it's still a flicker card that we can do repeatedly. And that's very important for generating tons and tons of value with our commander. Then we've got the Soul Herder. 3 mana, 1/1. Whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on Soul Herder. going to grow pretty big. And at the beginning of your end step, if you may exile another target creature you control and return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So for 3 mana, we get to reset our commander, get a bunch more tokens, bunch more mana, just so much value to be had. Then Eldrazi Displacer, one of my personal favourites. 3 mana, 3/3 with Devoid, so it's not colourless. Pay a 2 and a colourless, exile another target creature, and then return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Perfect for getting all of those artifacts that we need. Sadly, the treasures cannot make colourless, but I'm sure you'll find a way to make it. Then finally, a nice little board wipe here that I'd maybe play. Consuming Tide, 4 mana for a sorcery. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to the owner's hand. Then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in their hand than you. So it's just a nice little bounce spell, and I'd like to mention this because playing bounce spells in a deck like this, we could end up, bouncing all of our treasures and stuff. What a disaster! But we can sacrifice them before and draw a bunch of cards. But we can easily redeploy our commander, and it's another type of bounce, really, And I think it fits well in this deck, and potentially could draw a ton of cards with it. So there you go, a nice little flickery section. And those are my top cards for Tivit. I think it's a really cool commander, So many different directions you could go with him, Sphinxes, artifacts, voting. There's so much to do. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.